Hi everyone. So in this little set of videos here, we're going to talk about organization in Maya. Not exactly the most riveting topic, but a critical one. Because how you organize the items that you're modeling or the objects that you're modeling in Maya will dictate the outcome in a lot of cases, especially as you start to get more into animation and start to build more complex scenes. So we're going to talk about that. So there's a few concepts that we want to cover here, and we're going to start with the idea of creating groups in Maya. So a group is something that is very, very fundamental to Maya, and it's something that you've already probably dealt with indirectly. Namely, you've been working in the outliner, and so you're probably comfortable to a certain extent with how things are kind of laid out here and how this will actually change as you model. Right? So that like if you are combining a mesh or extracting, things change, object names change, right? And there are some funny objects that get created in the process of doing that. So for example, up until now, let's say you've got an object, right? And let's just put an edge loop down the middle of that object, and you can see that's currently called pcube1. And let's highlight some faces here. And let's say we want to split this object in half using our extract button, right? And we know what that's going to do, right? It's going to take this single object here and it's going to split it into two. And so there we go, right? Now, it doesn't look like we've actually got two things here. We've still got something in our outliner that says pcube1, but the icon is different and this little plus sign here has appeared next to it. So let's look at what happened. So if we click on the plus sign, we can see that actually inside of that, it kind of twirls open and we've got a couple of different objects. We've got now something called polysurface1, polysurface2, and then we've got this thing that says transform1. So let's talk about this. The main things that are of interest to us, right, are going to be, this new pcube1 here that was created, and the polysurface, right? So we're familiar with these, right? And we know what happens when we press the sort of extract button. We get two separate meshes. But the container that it puts this in is a group, right? And that's basically what's of interest to us here, right? And this group, basically you can think of it like a folder, right? And the thing about this, right, is if I undo what I've just done, right, essentially what this group is it kind of holds these objects together, right? And again, you can think of this like you would think about a folder on, a kind of file system, like the File Explorer on a PC or the Finder on a Mac. And really, all that a group is a pivot point in space, right? So in other words, I can take all these objects out, and you can actually move things out of a group. You can do that a couple of different ways. You can actually select the group and just go to Edit, Ungroup, and then that will get rid of the group. Or you can simply just middle mouse click and drag on a selected group of things inside the group and move them out of the group. So I've still got the group here, it's still there, but it's not containing anything. And so you can see all it is right now is just a sort of point in space, right? And that's what it is. So you can kind of think about a group as a point in space that holds objects, or that can those objects can kind of refer to. And so this is a kind of a crucial organizational thing, right? Because what we've done here is we've got two objects, right? Two completely separate meshes, and they are not welded together, right? They are actually separate things, and they are held together, though, by this group, right? So they kind of, if I move the group, I get to move these things together. But you can see if I were to smooth preview this thing, they don't actually smooth together, right? These will smooth independently of one another, right? So these aren't welded. If these were welded, we'd get a more spherical object here. Now that's a very critical organizational principle for Maya, is the difference between something that is grouped and then something that is actually combined together, right? So when we combine things together, the reason that we would combine something together is so that we could weld it together, right? So when we actually take these two meshes here and say use our mesh combine button to put them together, we would do that as a kind of prerequisite to say merging our vertices together. And now that I've done that, you can see that I should have something that will actually kind of smooth together. So if I move this point here, I can actually stretch out the object itself, right? So this is moving together. This is now one mesh, right? And you can see that as I start to manipulate that, Maya is creating all of these additional groups inside of my outliner here. And things are starting to look kind of messy, right? Now, this isn't as unorganized as it looks. Maya is actually being very responsible as it does this. As I start to extract and combine, it sort of leaves this trail behind. And that trail, what it's trying to do is it's trying to preserve the pivot points that you destroy when you combine and extract things. So let's look at this one more way. So let me create a new cube here, and I'll delete all of this stuff. And let's do exactly what we just did. So right now, this object has one pivot point. It is one mesh. And if I were to grab these faces on this half and extract them just like I did, right? Now, there are actually two pivot points, right? Because we have two separate meshes. So we've got a new pivot point for this object here, and we've got a new pivot point for this object here. And these are separate pivot points, right? But Maya very smartly will try to preserve the original pivot point, the pivot point that was there before we extracted. And that's what this additional little group is that it kind of places here. So a group is another way of thinking about just kind of a point in space given a kind of a little tag here. And that's what this additional little group or node that was created inside of our outliner is. And basically what it's trying to do is it's trying to preserve the history of this object when it does that. So the only way that you can really get rid of all this stuff is to delete your history. So if I go to Edit, Delete All by Type, and then History, you can see that that little transform that was there before goes away. And then after that, I can always take things out of the group, and I could delete the group node, right? Sometimes it's good to keep that. Sometimes you want those extra pivot points because they can be useful. And that's our next subject. So in the next video, we're going to talk a little bit about pivot points and why they're important and how we can use them to help organize our scene.